Good morning. So good morning, everybody, and welcome. Welcome to the Racial Justice and Ubuntu presentation this morning. We are very pleased to welcome each and every one of you here, and we acknowledge the presence of the Honorable Minister of Social Development and Seniors, Minister Tanae Furbitt, as well as the Honorable MP of Constituency 31 that I live in, Crystal Caesar. We're also grateful for the presence of any other dignitaries, and which, well, in my estimation, we all are. So, as the Executive Director of Citizens Uprooting Racism Bermuda, CURB, Bermuda's only charitable organization whose primary focus is on anti-racism, it is quite fitting that CURB be asked to host the Racial Justice and Ubuntu portion of the events happening this weekend. I'm happy to represent CURB in this collaborative effort between the Wesley Methodist Church and Out Bermuda, and equally grateful to both organizations for including CURB in the planning of this breakfast and presentation. We at CURB look forward to further collaborative initiatives, Reverend Steele and Out Bermuda, moving forward. Also, in talking with Dr. Lewis this morning, we're looking forward to collaborating with her and building relationship with her as well, moving forward. So I'm excited to present our speaker for this morning, the Reverend Dr. Jacqui Lewis. The Reverend Dr. Jacqui Lewis uses her gifts as author, activist, preacher, and public theologian toward creating an anti-racist, just, fully welcoming society in which everyone has enough and where everyone is equal. Believing faith communities can lead the way to racial reconciliation, Dr. Lewis co-founded the Middle Project and the Revolutionary Love Conference with her spouse, the Reverend John Junker, which trained leaders to create a more just society. Dr. Lewis is the Senior Minister for Public Theology and Transformation at Middle Collegiate Church in New York City. Dr. Lewis has appeared on The Today Show, All In with Chris Hayes, AM Joy, ABC, NBC, PBS, CBS, WPIX, and on the History Channel series, The Bible Rules. Dr. Lewis created 2 national television programs, Just Faith on MSNBC.com and Chapter and Verse on PBS. Dr. Lewis's work has also been featured in the Wall Street Journal, the Washington Post, the New York Times, and many other national publications. Dr. Lewis's books include Fierce Love, make sure you get one today before you leave, A Bold Path to Ferocious Courage and Rule-Breaking Kindness That Can Heal the World, 10 Essential Strategies for Becoming a Multiracial Congregation, The Power of Stories, a guide for leaders in multiracial, multicultural congregations, and the children's book, You Are So Wonderful, a rhyming celebration of diversity. So I'm honored to present our speaker for today, Dr. Lewis, to the podium.
Good morning, everybody. Good morning. I am so pleased that you would get up on a Saturday morning to come and talk about race and Ubuntu. I'm thankful. I'm thankful for being invited into this incredible conversation with you. I'm so thankful, Jay, for all the ways you shepherded these connections. It's so great to find new allies, colleagues, accomplices, the CURB. Come on. We can heal the world together, can't we?
Amen.
Yes, we can. So thank you. Thank you so much for this. In all of that introduction, I have to just be honest with you, it is embarrassing. It's on my website, but oh my God. There's a lot in there that feels a little braggy, and I don't feel braggy, I feel blessed.
Amen.
The opportunities that have happened to me to have the mic, including this one, right, is a blessing. Can you hear me? It's being nice. Is this good? One of my colleagues, her name is Christina Fleming, a young white woman from Michigan. I picked her up one day. She came to church, and her energy was so beautiful, just so clearly a light. I took her out and wooed her over lunch and said, I think I need you to come on my team and work and help me grow a young adult ministry. And Christina was like, I don't think so. But she came, and she had a media background, and she, like everything that Middle Church got the mic for, that young white woman from Michigan helped us get the mic. It wasn't me, right? At first it was her. And I tell that quick story to say, it's not us, it's not me, it's not you, it's us. It's all of us that can get the mic together and a megaphone, a mic, to shout into the world that racism, especially anti-Black racism, is the fault line on which too much of our culture is built. And until we fix that fault line, we're not going to fix the world, and we're not going to fix each other. So I'm just thankful for the opportunity to talk about the Ubuntu idea, to talk about how we can focus our lives on anti-racist work, and then to make some space for us to have some conversation. Does that sound like a good way to do today?
Amen.
Let me do something just a little different here, so I don't bend over. Is that okay? All right, okay. My greatest accomplice in the work of anti-racism is sitting in the back. His name is John Jacqui. He's a United Methodist retired minister. He's a white person. And every single day in our life we work on anti-racism, don't we? Yeah. Every single day we work on anti-racist work together. So thank you, John, for being here as well. Let me start here. Let me start with origin stories. My origin story. I think this is my origin story, though I know there's more to it than this. I'm 5 years old. My mom and dad have met in Omaha, Nebraska. Omaha, Nebraska is nowhere in the United States. Not just like, why are you there? Who knows? But they both grew up in Mississippi. My mom in Rollville. That's where Fannie Lou Hamer, the voting rights activist, was born and is buried. In fact, Mom sang in the choir with Fannie Lou Hamer. And her Uncle George, who's my great Uncle George, who rocked me on his knees on my grandmother's porch. P.S. by the way, you know when you're little, you think things are really big. I went to Mississippi last year and had a chance to visit my grandmother's house. I'm like, where did we sit? What? It was a matchbox, right? With a teeny tiny porch. But my Uncle George babysat me when my mother went to work with her mother as a candy striper in the hospital. So I was rocked to sleep by a voting rights activist named George Jordan, who was best friends with Fannie Lou Hamer. And that's part of my origin story, is in the soul of Mississippi, in the Delta, in the red clay, in the smell of magnolias. I'm cradled in this fierce love, where my uncle and my mama and my grandmama, my dear, before Tyler Perry, my dear, my dear knew to pray for her enemies. She knew to pray for the people who had put her and her children in Jim Crow. They knew that their prayer had power. They knew that they had to pray with their feet. They knew they had to do activist work, and so they did. So that's in my body. Faith does not mean our personal relationship with Jesus Christ, although that's great. What it means is healing our souls and healing the world. What it means is disrupting the things that cause people to suffer. This is my origin story. So I'm growing up in Mississippi a little while. I moved with my parents to New Hampshire, because you have to move with your parents when you're 5. You just have to go with them. You can't move in by yourself. So off we go to New Hampshire, where Dad's in the Air Force, and I'm 5, and I'm the only Black kid on the base. Yeah, the only one on the base. And I'm cool, because I don't know anything different than that. I'm just Jack, which is what they called me. I had 2 friends, Tommy Hollister, red-haired, blonde-haired, both rascals, one with no teeth, because when you're 5, you sometimes don't have teeth. We were besties. We did the walk home together, walk to school together. We churned the butter in the classroom together. We took naps together. In those days, you had to take a nap when you were in kindergarten. We put our chairs up on the lunchroom table together, because we were learning how to be good stewards of the world. And we were just cool like that till Lisa came. Dun, dun, dun. Till Lisa moved in from Mississippi. Lisa of the cropped hair and pretty eyes. Lisa, who did not like black people. Because her origin story was also in Mississippi. She resented the hell out of the fact that these two white boys were my friends. So one morning she stage whispered, "Why are you sitting next to that nasty N-word?" And don't you know that she gets chocolate milk from her mother's tits? Now, I'm 5. I don't know anything about milk coming from breasts. And I have never heard the N-word at that point in my life. My mom and dad, who grew up in Jim Crow, who walked past the school to go to the colored school, who had to step off the sidewalk so the white people could pass by, who were poor. Their parents, my mom's mom was a sharecropper. My mom picked cotton when she was 4 years old. My parents' poverty and racial trauma all suddenly became in my eyes when Lisa calls me the N-word. They've been trying to protect us, and now it's just split wide open. Now we have to explain it. Now we're introduced. Now we're baptized into American racism. Are you with me? Mm-hmm. Now we're raced. I'm raced. You're just Jacqui. You're just Emma Richards' kid. You're just black, beautiful child, but now you're raced. There's meaning to that color, to your physiognomy. There's a legacy behind it. There's narrative behind it. There's castigation behind it. You're not as good as we are behind it. I go home, I tell my parents, I'm crying, "Lisa called me the N-word." I should amend this for a minute. When she called me the N-word, someplace in my soul, someplace in my memory was some little ditty that I had heard, and I'm gonna just say it so that you understand that I'm not perfect either. White cracker, you don't shine. I'll bet you $5 I can beat you behind. Where had I heard that? How had I heard that? But I had it, and I said it. So, Mommy, she called me the N-word. What did you do? Well, I said, right? My mother's like, first of all, no. We're not doing that. We don't call people names, Jack. Secondly, isn't it silly that she thinks that you're less than she is because you're a Negro? I was a Negro then. It was 1963. I became black in what, 1968? Isn't it silly that she called you out of your name and she thought you were worse than her? It's so silly, Jack. And then she says, you're a Lewis, you're ours, God loves you, we love you, you can do anything you want to do. You're a Lewis, you're ours, God loves you, we love you, you can do anything you want to do if you work hard. That never leaves me, that story never leaves me. My mom's resilient story never leaves me. That night we prayed, and I prayed, Lord, I lay me down to sleep, which is kind of a scary prayer. I should die before I wake up. Why do little people have to have an insurance policy, right? Okay. So after I prayed with traumatic, scary prayer, I then added, God, make it each so that no matter what color we are, we'll know we're loved. Now that's my origin story. Can I make a world in which no matter what color we are, we know we're loved? Tells Mommy, Dad, if you read my book, Dad's fiery character. He got no patience. He got big temper. What the? I do remember he said some words I won't repeat. But he went to the base commander and demanded an apology. One from her father to my father, one from her to me. Reparations, y'all, in 1963. Go ahead, Richard Lewis. And he's 88, and this is his favorite story of his life with me. Remember that time? That girl called you the N-word? Yes, Daddy. but do you remember how we handled it? So he went and got the apology, and he got it. From a white base commander, from a white father from Mississippi, and then she apologized to me and invited me to her stupid little birthday party. But then I had to go to. It was not fun, but I was there with my fist up, I'm sure. I'm 5. I'm 8. I'm 8 in my origin story. And my mom and dad are like Christians. Like, I'm not sure if they read the whole Bible, but they read the 10 Commandments, and they read the Beatitudes, and they read the Genesis story. And so that was their canon. That's what it is. God created us good, we're good. Do not do the bad things. And blessed are those who mourn. Blessed are those who are persecuted. Like, can you feel the blessing for the ones on the outsiders? This is what they teach us. That's the thing we memorize. Those are the sort of core ethical commandments for them. And I get to take communion for the first time when I'm 8. My mom, the bread is coming. Mommy says, this bread means God will always love you. The cup is coming, and Mom says, this cup means God will never leave you. I'm telling you that I got a theology of God's love when I was little. And that love theology made me think, well, everyone is loved. But Christian hasn't always done that, has it? I say Christian hasn't always done that. Sadly, Christianity has been empired, maybe it was empired from the beginning of time, and has built in it, hardwired into it, the white nationalism that we're experiencing today. I want you to come with me on this journey for just a few minutes, okay? For just a few minutes in this origin story, did I as a Black Christian imagine that Christianity meant anti-Black? Absolutely not. But it actually has meant anti-Black. It has meant white supremacy, it has meant patriarchy, it has meant homophobia, and as a Christian clergy, I just think I need to tell them that. So in my origin story of becoming Christian, my mom and dad sort of make a canon in which I find a way. But over time, I find out that Christian means taking the Exodus story out of the Bible, so that Black enslaved people can't read about freedom. Do you all know that there was a slave Bible? A slave Bible in which those chapters are taken out. How many different ways Black preachers were taught to teach the Black congregants that the best way to get to heaven was to obey their masters. Yeah. The story of Onesimus and See This Is You. How many different ways the Bible, Christianity was used with silly stories of, I don't know, Noah's boys are looking at their father, not Noah. Yeah, Noah's boys are looking at their father, he's drunk, they're drunk, they look upon his nakedness, and the child is cursed. And because the child is cursed, the child is supposed to be a slave. And that's an origin story. I'm talking about origin stories. Origin stories that enslaving Black people is a punishment for a child laughing at his father. It's in there, an origin story. An origin story about chosenness that is true for Jewish folks, for the people of Judea. They are crushed over and over again by Babylonians and Parthenians and Philistines and just battle after battle. But the Jewish people have a narrative, an origin story of chosenness. Though we have had our people wiped out, lost our land, though we have been disparaged for millennia, God chose us, through whom to bless all the nations. Do you know what I mean? That chosen narrative. Well, guess what? That chosen narrative gets picked up by white people in Europe who are being oppressed. You're oppressed, we're oppressed. We're feeling left out, you felt left out. You were oppressed by the nations, we were oppressed by the monarchy. We're going to take boats across the world to find a land in which we can be free. But the Jews were chosen and we're the new chosen. That's what Paul said. Graft us in here, baby. We're the new chosen ones. And because we're the new chosen ones, we are destined to rule the world. Oh, because God said that too. Be fruitful and multiply and subdue the world. Be fruitful and multiply and dominate the world. So, those people who read the chosenness narrative, who saw themselves cast in the role of chosen, felt they were destined, ordained, blessed, designed to go take the world and dominate the world and Christianize the world because they were chosen to do it. That's manifest destiny. That's doctrine of discovery. That's the papal bulls that said, if you get it and you evangelize it, it's yours to have. Feeling the origin story of white supremacy baked into the Christian narrative because we've read onto it. We've read onto it that God wants some of us to be in charge of others. Let me just take a breath there. Some of you are looking at me like, really? What? Can you feel the truth in that? Religion designed for good and love becomes a weapon for domination and destruction because of the way the text is interpreted, the way the origin story is interpreted. And then we have colonialization. Here, all of the Caribbean, North America, South America, everywhere, those first Spaniards, Portuguese, Europeans, Anglo-Saxon folks felt they wanted to go, they did go. With the cross and with entitlement and with theologies that meant they were chosen to rule the world. I'm embarrassed sometimes to be a Christian pastor when that's part of the story. I'm embarrassed that my church, the Dutch Reformed Church, we don't call it that anymore, but the Reformed Church in America, that's one of our denominations for middle church, were those people who came across the ocean to trap furs with the indigenous people, who then bought Manhattan, the hilly land on Turtle Island, North America, is what the Lenape called Turtle Island, for however many wampum that meant about $55. When the Indians had said, why don't you just share this with us? But they went away to be warned, and then our people, my ecclesiastical ancestors, stole the land from them and then enslaved African people to build New York, to build wealth, to build all of Manhattan. I'm embarrassed about that. But I want to be particular. That's an origin story, too. This land is your land, this land is my land. We discovered it, we Christianized it, we stole the children out of their families' homes, we sent them to boarding schools, we abused the Indian out of them, and we built the nation on stolen land with stolen bodies. That's racism in America and here and all over the known world. White supremacy masquerading as Christianity. Whew, God forgive us.
Mm-hmm.
God forgive our souls. Forgive us, God, for believing that we know you better than other people who speak other faith languages know you, better than the people who speak Buddhism, or Hinduism, or Sikh, or Zoroastrianism, or Islam, or the people who speak humanism or speak, creation. Forgive us, God, for acting as though we know what you want for the world and putting in your mouth, God, language against queer people and language against women. Language against women. Language against children, young people. Language against brown people, black people. Language against those heathens who did not know you first. Forgive us, God, for that. Forgive us, God. So as a theologian who happens to be a psychologist, who happens to be an anti-racist activist, I'm thinking about the way these stories all sort of blend together and reinforce each other like an unholy braid, right? Like an unholy rope braided together that would, forgive this metaphor, but it's right there, so I'm going to say it, would hang us, would kill us, would strangle us, would choke us from our freedom, from our liberty. As opposed to, for example, another origin story from my holy book that says, Lord, you searched me and known me. You know my laying down and my rising up. Is there anything I can do that you don't know about? I praise you and thank you that I'm awesomely and wonderfully made. I'm awesomely and wonderfully made. Not white people awesomely and wonderfully made. Not Christians awesomely and wonderfully made. Humans awesomely and wonderfully made. If we're going to believe the book, let's believe that. All the people awesomely and wonderfully made, fearfully, awesomely, wonderfully made in God's image, like a theology of Imago Dei. And I'm using that to get right now to Ubuntu. Because I think Ubuntu predates religion. I think it predates theologies of oppression. I think right there in the stuff of that song 139, I'm awesomely and wonderfully made in your image, is this kind of sense that we who are the children, the people of God, are co-creators in the world and called to see in each other something about who God is, what God is, something good, something holy, something beautiful, something powerful. Ubuntu is a South-Saharan African concept. I experienced it first in a book written by a nice white guy called The Fifth Discipline. And he was writing about business and how you can flourish and how you make a team work. And I was like, Ubuntu, that's interesting, let me look that up. And you look up Ubuntu and you find, I practiced this, I can impress you, that the words Ubuntu and Ubuntu and Ubuntu, Ubuntu and Ubuntu and Ubuntu. I love this phrase. It means a human is a human through other humans. A human is a human through other humans. You could be in another part of sub-Saharan Africa and they would say it differently, but they would say almost the same thing. A human is a human through other humans. There's no single word for human. It's a human is a human in community. And in particular, when the Zulu people see each other and greet each other, they reinforce this by saying, I see you. Linda, I see you. And the response back is, I exist. So when I see a person, a colleague, a friend, a neighbor, a stranger in the street, and I say, Salbona, say Salbona.
Sabona.
I see you. And the response back, with a click that I can't click, but the response back is Simcona. Simcona.
Simcona.
I exist. There's some acknowledgement that I'm not even real until you see me. Like the Velveteen Rabbit, I don't know, that book where like, it gets loved into being seen. I don't exist until you acknowledge who I am. I am who I am because you are who you are. All of these expressions are ways to talk about this concept. John and I went to South Africa a few times. We went to Robben Island. We went to the place where Mandela had been imprisoned. And when Mandela writes in his book, I came to understand the humanity of my captors. I came to understand the humanity of my captors. He who was humiliated by his captors, beaten by his captors, punished by, put in isolation cells by his captors, came to understand their humanity. He said, I know they didn't come to the world knowing how to hate me. They learned how to hate me. That's Ubuntu, a kind of ability to have empathy, even for the other who derides you. This is Desmond Tutu's thinking. This is what led to the Truth and Reconciliation movement in South Africa. The sense that even these Afrikaners, have you been to South Africa? Have you been going to the museum? We maybe mommy and daddy kind of get it from the Jim Crow experience in the South, but this is a wholesale hatred, vile hatred for the black majority that caused the white Afrikaners to go to their theological institutions. That's why I started with God. Go to their theological institutions and say, make us a theology of apartheid, like they had in America. America showed us how to do it. They understand how to hijack God. Let's do it. Let's do it together. So not just we're going to hate you and put you away and take your rights, and over time, build fences through which you have to go, barbed wire, put you on plantations which were what? Shanty towns? Totally disavow your humanity in the name of God. Because this is what God wants. This is how it goes theologically. From America to South Africa. From America to Nazi Germany. We let God have our hatred in God's mouth. And in South Africa, those people who rose up against it, yes, many rose up in violence, and many rose up in Ubuntu. And they rise up saying, our destinies are inextricably connected. I cannot be who I am fully until you are who you are fully. Which is to say, not black people get power because the white people switch roles and end up sort of in oppressed states, but that we humankind rise up together and understand that we are bound in what Dr. King would call a web of humanity. So my destiny and your destiny are connected together. Ubuntu is what I'm calling fierce love. Love of our neighbor that is inextricably bound to our love for ourselves. All of the world's major religions have this kind of teaching. Islam says, don't withhold from someone that which you want for yourself. I didn't know that until I started doing research. We have a whole bad rap about Islam. But Islam says, don't withhold from your neighbor that which you need for yourself. Sikh, we say Sikh, but they say Sikh, S-I-K-H, says don't do anything to break anyone else's heart. Can you imagine a culture, a world in which we thrived because we didn't do anything to break anyone else's heart? Judaism has only one time, love your neighbor as yourself, but the rest of the times in the book about love, their book about love, is you shall love the stranger, because you were once strangers in a strange land. Right? So this Ubuntu idea for me is an ethic of love that allows us to see the fate, the destiny, the thriving, the surviving, to go womanist on us, of our neighbor as our cause du jour. We cannot be who we are unless our neighbor is who they are. And we can't have neighbors thriving in the context of white supremacy. And it's our job to disrupt that with this kind of fierce love. What do I mean by fierce love? Ferocious courage and rule-breaking kindness that can heal the world. When I was 22 and young and frisky and didn't have any money, I was driving to a wedding with my then partner, and we had a catastrophic car accident in which the car spun around on the highway and then flipped on its roof 3 times. The man I was with got hospitalized. I had head injury, but nobody knew, so I walked away. Standing in the hospital lobby with no money, no car, total car, no resources, a white lady sees me across the lobby and walks to me and says, what's going on with you? Why are you crying? Well, I was crying because I was desperate, and I told her the story that I just told you with much more detail and bloody glass in the hair, terrible mess, hot mess, hot mess, hot mess. And she just says, I got you. Drives me to get food, drives me to the drugstore, buys me stuff what I need, takes me to the hotel, pays the bill, gets me the next morning, takes me to the hospital, like rescues me, totally rescues me. A stranger totally rescues me. Rule-breaking kindness. Can we see the white Canadian lady see us? Can we see the queer teen who's being abused because she's queer as us? Can we see Black Lives Matter as our cause? Because we understand we are complicit in white supremacy unless we purpose ourselves to disrupt it. One relationship at a time, but also systemically, because white people in the room, Black people need, demand, have to have an Ubuntu kind of support. I see you, you exist. I see you microaggressed. I see you every day, the racism doesn't go away. I see that, and I own that as my project. Let me take a breath here. Racism is so automatic. White supremacy is so ensconced in us, all of us. It is a narrative against which Black people have to push every morning when we brush our teeth. Is that true? Whether the experience is someone actually calling you the N-word, or the experience is there's no eye contact for you in the room in which you're running the meeting, or whether the experience is you were accidentally left off an email chain, or whether the experience is the story of your Blackness makes you inherently less than white people. Just inherently less than white people. The nicest, smartest, kindest white people can have in the bottom of their soul a suspicion, as Thomas Jefferson wrote in Notes on the State of Virginia, his treatise to France to come play with us in America. You know, these indigenous people are kind of pretty. I'm paraphrasing. They're kind of pretty. They look good. They're not as smart as white people, but they're kind of cute. The Black people, on the other hand, this is Thomas Jefferson, I don't like the way they look. And they're not that smart. And I find it hard to, I don't think they have feelings. They're working in the field all day, and when the work is over, they're kind of like laughing and dancing. Doesn't seem like it bothers them. And furthermore, I don't think they have the capacity to love. Their love making is more like animals running. And their grief is transient. So you whip one day and the next day they're okay. This is Thomas Jefferson writing in Notes on the State of Virginia, reference it in the book, or with less paraphrase, longer quote. To export white supremacy to France, which leads to the development of the fake race science in Europe, the eugenics, that leads to the categorization of skulls that let you know who's superior and who's inferior. It's rated by skulls by some mad scientists in the Caucasus region who decides that the cutest skull is of a gypsy streetwalker. He liked it, so he called it Caucasian. Don't ever use the word Caucasian. Do you ever use the word Caucasian? The cute white skull is on the top, and the skull he didn't like is on the bottom, because it's from Africa. This is Thomas Jefferson's legacy for the world, is cute white skulls, which seem to be smarter than ugly black skulls. And then a scientist in Philadelphia picks it up, and suddenly all over the world is a science that supports blackness as inferior, that carries itself all the way to the book, The Bell Curve, that is in us, in the room all the time. Little black boys can't learn, little black girls are fast, little black girls are women. And I'm talking about black and white not because it doesn't matter about indigenous or Indian or, right, Chinese. Of course, all of these ethnicities matter, and all of them who are not white or oppressed, but the fault line, the original sin, the original trauma is between black and white. Indigenous in the United States, indigenous people all over the globe had their land stolen, their people grabbed, so I'm gonna go first our sin against indigenous people. What I'm gonna say, I'm going on top of that is the way black lives don't matter. And our remedy for that has to be straightforward, continuing articulation of the way it looks and feels and where it lives. And I think moving past religion to an ethic of love that is really Ubuntu, that says when you are okay, I'm okay. And I'm not okay until you're okay. Like, let me say that again, right? I'm not okay if you're not okay. So let's imagine Ubuntu as underneath the laws we pass, or underneath the curriculum we pick, or underneath the stories we tell. Can I harm you and be okay? I'm not okay if you're being harmed. I'm not okay if you're being raced. I'm not okay if you can't pay your bills. I'm not okay because we're one human family. If you're experiencing racism in the marketplace, in the workplace, in your community, on the street, I'm not okay if black pay is less than white pay. I'm not okay if black unemployment rates are higher. I'm not okay. I'm not okay if black queer people experience an even higher level of discrimination than white queer people. Like, I am trying to say we're not okay while white supremacy rules our world, and it rules our world. Your work in CURB, my work at Middle Church, in the Middle Project, which I do with John, is to change the story. We have to change the story. And we have to change the origin story. This is what I'm talking about. It's not just about today. We got to change the future, right? But if we don't change the origin story, if we don't disrupt the origin story, then it's still underneath there cooking and smoldering and, quite frankly, foul smelling. And the origin story hasn't been changed. They don't want us talking about the origin story. In America, we're banning books, so we don't talk about the origin story. Kimberly Crenshaw's incredible work, Derek Bell's incredible work on how to disrupt racism, particularly through the law and how we practice it. That's what critical race theory is, as a class for law students to learn about the systemic nature of racism and how it codifies itself in the law. But what we've done, what we've allowed to have happen in America, because we're oh so crazy, is that the media and some of the teachers have grabbed onto the words critical race theory. Oh my God. And then because people aren't reading, they're like, we're not doing critical race theory. Of course you're not doing critical race theory, unless you're teaching law school. But we better do some race talk. We better do some understanding of the origin story. We better understand how we got here so we know how to get from here to there. And we're not doing that work. I don't think we're doing that work. I think it scares us to do that work. I think it frightens us to do that work. I have my congregation always reading race things. We read White Fragility by Robin DiAngelo. Oh my God, we're still traumatized from that book 4 years later. But recently my staff said, though it traumatized us, though it broke our hearts, though it made black people, us look at white people like, you really are acting racist today, aren't you? It also cracked wide open something that was a thing we could walk through. Vulnerability, fear, anxiety, yes, all in the room, but truth, radical truth telling about what it looks like and how it feels to be black in America needed to happen. And it's changing it's changing the story, to know the origin story. I don't know where I'm at time-wise. Someone give me like a look, I should shut up, or, okay? 15 minutes more for the
15
talk? 15 minutes for me, or 15 minutes for all of us?
Whenever you're ready to go for.
Okay, got it, okay. All right. We have a race problem. W.E.B. Du Bois said the problem of the 20th century was the color line. It's the problem of the 21st century is the color line. It's going to be the problem of the 22nd century, the color line, if we don't really look at it. I'm saying if we don't really look at it. Dr. King says power at its best is love implementing the demands of justice, and justice at its best is power correcting everything that stands against love. I'm thinking we need some love power. And I think it has to start with us. So the idea of Ubuntu is, I see you, I exist, I am who I am because you are who you are. But I think if we don't, I think as a writer, as a thinker, as a psychologist, if we don't start with us, then it's platitudes. So what I mean by starting with us is, we have to love ourselves. So I just want to talk to the people of color in the room for a minute. Like, can we really love ourselves well in a culture that doesn't love us? No. It's a big project. The container, the environment in which we live our lives is fraught. It's full of arrows, of injustice and derision. We're raised in families, my generation, I'm 63, raised in families who are tough on you, so you will be tough in the world. Discipline is hard. Criticism is quick. Baby, I just don't want you to go out there and get hurt, type of feeling. But then you, as a child growing up, are not encouraged. I wasn't encouraged to love myself. That was selfish and narcissistic and all kinds of stuff like that. I was raised to be other-centered, big sister, other-centered. So I'm not talking about selfishness. I am saying, though, a kind of strident examination of who we are so we can love ourselves. The definition of love I'm trying to put in the world is the non-possessive delight in the unique particularity of the other. The non-possessive delight in the unique particularity of the other. So that's Jim Roder. Jacqui would say, the non-possessive delight in the strangeness of the other. The unique particularity of the other might be they're just weird and strange. It might be that they're odd. It might be that they, have really struggling with something that makes them misbehave in the workplace. But if we think of love as the unique, kind of a delight in the uniqueness of the other, we can turn that kind of love on ourselves. I want us to delight in ourselves. Big boned, short hair, a little bit of diabetes, touch of sugar, queer, just discovering, loud, nervous, don't like to get up early in the morning. Okay, whatever these parts of ourselves are that we've been taught in the world that don't have value. Are you feeling me? I grew up in a time when they were selling Maxima. Like, I say it and the room goes, Like, did I know that was so that it was just lightning just a little bit? It was to fight eczema, but they had a little lightning in there. Yeah, it did, just a little bit. It's called Get Your Glow. Dixie Peach powder. They never made a shade dark enough for my mom. So you get it and pat it and blend 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 it. When you get through blending it, you're just a little lighter. They sold bleaching cream when I was little. And they still do. what happened to Diana Ross? She used to be dark. We have exported and therefore introjected anti-blackness. I want us to love ourselves. I want us to work on loving the chocolatiness of ourselves, the nappy-hairedness of ourselves, the blackness of ourselves, all of it that comes with it. Black people, brown people, and white folks. You gotta love yourself too. Because there's a lot of shame in the work of anti-racism. A lot of shame. As in, look at what we did and how we did it wrong, and we move from the shame and guilt as opposed to moving from self-love. I think we accidentally perpetuate the same old stories. Because I'm gonna tell a story that's really hard, but you know, I've got a staff person who's white, who's an anti-racist. And every other day they're crying about something that happened that made them cry about black people. I'm so sad, I'm crying. I don't want you to cry. I want you to stop talking to me like that. I want you to pay attention to the way you use your words. I want you to receive my strength. I want you to stop acting like you know so much. And I don't want you to act like you know so much about blackness, because you just can't get black just because you studied it. And just because you studied it doesn't mean you're finished. Are you with me? You're not finished because you read Robin's book. You're not finished because you wrote that history. Love y'all, but we're not finished. So what I want the self-love to be born of, I know the way I'm going to love you is to really also love me first. Like, you can be engaged with me, we can be friends, you can respect me, you can admire me. You're not gonna love me if you don't love you. There's gonna be a transactional relationship, but it's not gonna be love. I believe this is true. I believe the way we're going to heal the world of racism is to love the hell out of it. To love the hell out of ourselves, to love ourselves past the wounds that are there, the scars that are there. And the way to do that, I think, is to know it. So this is a kind of journey of knowing your origin story. And not just knowing it, but plumbing it for what truth it has for you. Truth that leads to you loving yourself. I'm called the N-word by Lisa at 5. My mother teaches me to pray. My father teaches me to be an activist. I, every day, thank God for the wounding that Lisa did, because it gave me strength, it gave me wisdom, it gave me purpose. I know that because I've plumbed my story. I thank God every day for a tough dad that was hard to love sometimes. And I thank God for the conflict that I've had with him that taught me that conflict actually works. That you actually can fight your way to freedom. Not with guns, but with truth. I thank God for the journey that you've been on, the story that you've lived, that gives you power and wisdom and strength if you look at it and review it and own it and hold it and exegete your story for the goodness that it has given you to do this work of racial healing. And I pray these words have been helpful. I'm gonna sit down. See what you want to talk about. Thanks. You want to do this?
Does anyone have any questions or anything they want to say to Dr. Lewis before we close up? Yes.
I thoroughly enjoy that. What my question is more a question about, you spoke about your religious belief and the Bible and so forth, and about horrific things that happen by using that book.
Yes.
I went to Ghana, a synagogue, and one thing I learned was in the State Forks that they had churches in all of them, Methodist church, Christian church, a different church.
Yeah.
What I'm asking is, how do you maneuver? What type of mental gymnastics do you have to craft to hold on to your biblical views, understanding what that book was used to do to your people?
Yeah, that's a great question. Did you hear that? Look, I let it go. I don't hold on to much of it, if I'm honest. The parts I hold on to are what I said was my parents' canon. Love your neighbor, love yourself, don't steal your people's stuff. God is love. It doesn't work. So maybe 25 years ago, as a young theologian, I did some gymnastics to make it work. But at 63, I just say, that doesn't work. And when I talk about it in a talk like this, I'm really trying to disrupt. Like, I want you to leave here disrupting Christianity anymore, right? Like, let it go. I don't know that I'm Christian anymore. I think I'm a follower of Jesus' teachings. Because I had to let go of the thing that hurts people. I let it go. Thank you for that question. I mean, you know, that's something. Yeah. Yes.
It's draining. It's draining, it's tiring, it's isolating. And you get to this point where you feel like nobody wants to keep hearing you. Nobody wants to keep hearing you talk always. Nobody wants to keep hearing you talk about struggle and homophobia. Nobody wants to keep hearing you being that person in the room that keeps bringing it up. So if we all do it, let's move on past it.
Yeah.
But you don't see the policies, you don't see the direction, you don't see the persons that you thought would make a change, making change in where they acknowledge and see that the everyday reality for Black people in this country is the same reality my grandmother used to talk about.
Amen.
It's draining.
Yes.
So how do you not just be like, listen,
Yeah.
I'm done, I'm tired?
It's draining, it's isolating, and we don't see change.
Mm.
Yeah. So I think, you know, in this book, Fierce Love, I talk about this movement for justice as a river. And sometimes you tag in, you tag out. Sometimes you got to get out and sleep on the shore and just let somebody else do the work. That's a fact. But I stay in the game because I got 2 grandbabies, and my niece and nephew are 11 and 14. And I just feel like I ain't got time. I ain't got time to let it go. I don't think so. But I think we need to have partners, and so that when you're tired, somebody else is doing the work. And I also think the work has to be for white people too. Like, Black people can't be the only ones in the room saying this is racist and this is terrible and it's the same as my grandmother. Because it's the same as Linda's grandmother, it's the same as Debbie's grandmother. Like, the racism that's permanent feeling in the world is the same experience for Black people and white people. It's not like the white people have less privilege, is what I'm trying to say. So I think white people and all of us, Chinese people, Indian people, Latinx people, we have to pick up this cause because we think it's important. It can't just be you as a woman of color think it's important. It's not going to change. So how do you take care of yourself in that? You take a nap, you take a break, you take a rest. I mean it. You breathe and then you get back in there because we need you in there. But you also have only one you. So you got to love yourself enough to let yourself take a break when you need one. I know you are whipped by this. I am too. I don't know what else to do except keep trying. The moral arc of the universe bends toward justice. Yes, it does. It's taking too long, and it needs more people pulling it down. So everybody who heard Linda say that, what are you going to do with it? How are you going to take up her work? Is my question.
It looks like one more question or so.
Okay, hi.
Just one.
Just one. Yeah, I've enjoyed the presentation, and it's good to know something's happening in Manhattan, not that far away from us. One of the focus that would come off of Linda's question about energy. I think that's what it's all
Yeah.
about. How is it that, 400 years ago, people were enslaved, and then today they're not enslaved? In chattel slavery, anyhow. And I think one of the focuses is a focus about what we're for rather than what we're against. And I think in the dynamics of people like Nelson Mandela as an example, that's something that I think he and people like Desmond Tutu demonstrated within the context of what they were doing. So when Mandela first went to prison, I mean, he was fighting against, he didn't even want to, they were marching him in, and he fought dirt. But eventually, he began to recruit
Yeah,
the jailers.
right.
In fact, when they did programs for education for themselves, they encouraged the jailers to get on board.
Right.
So in other words, it's a perspective, I believe, that we have to shift to, so that we're not fighting against, because in other words, going back to the arc of the universe, it's not what we're against, it's what we're for.
Yeah.
So the energy is in what we're going to be for, and it's that dynamic, I think, that is essential.
I think I might disagree with that just a little bit.
Yeah, you can.
Thanks. I think what I want to say is it's both and we need all of it. Like, I think we need, and maybe I'm a little different than King in this way, because I think we need all the strategies. Like, I think we do need every now and then a riot that is the voice of the oppressed. I think we do. I don't want people to get shot in a riot or killed in a riot, but I think protest matters. I think we gotta go, hell no. Black Lives Matter today, damn it. And we've seen that, the response to George Floyd, and more people in the streets. And so I think that's one strategy. I think we need another strategy where we are tagging in and out. I really mean that. Like, I can't just sprint. My husband will tell you I'm lying, but you gotta stop sometime and take a break, because that's actually self-love that teaches other people, poet Rudy Francisco, love yourself fiercely enough to teach other people how to do it. So if I'm just always pouring out as a black woman, then people think I'm just gonna always pour out. And why would they value my life, right? So that's a strategy of in-out rest. So protest, rest, there's a great thing called the NAP ministry, you wanna look that up. Education is a strategy. We do have to keep reading all the things and teach each other the things. But that's not enough, right? Then we need relationships, that's another strategy. Because you can be all the anti-racist you want, but if black people never come to your house, I'm not thinking you're so anti-racist. If I'm only your one black friend, I don't know how I'm feeling about your strategy, right? So we need relationships, and then I think we also need whatever is our spiritual source. To Raheem's question, like, I've let go of all that stuff. But God is love. So if love is my religion, what does that look like? What is the spirituality of love? What is your own practice? This thing needs spirit. We need help, y'all. It's not just enough. It's just not enough. Whatever the thing is, your yoga mat, your prayer life, your journaling, something that sustains your spirit in the middle of a hot mess. So lots of strategies. And yeah, what are we trying to create? What are we for? Sure. Origin story matters, and the future story matters. What's our vision? Can the vision pull us out? Absolutely. We would not be free except for a vision of liberty. So we need to have a vision, though, of anti-racism shaping our culture. So I think those are 5 or 6 strategies I think we need at the same time.
Thank you, thank you.
Thank you.
I have to speak. I'm a retired educator, but all through your talk, Dr. Jacqui, I was thinking of children, because they're the future. We are here, we're in the now, and we are daily, we use different strategies to survive all this that's going on,
Yes.
all this talk with racism and so forth, but our children. And I saw some young people here. It'd be good to hear from them what they think, because how do we connect with our education system? my 40-odd years, I have seen children struggle with who they are.
Mhm.
Who am I? Or black children especially. And it's been a continuous fight, and the consciousness, the awareness of what we do as educators have to be at the forefront.
Yep.
How do we get children to love themselves so they can see something and appreciate something that's not right in someone else, but extended love?
That's a beautiful question. I'm glad you made space for that question. In my little origin story talk, I'm trying to talk about what my parents did to help me love me. But I think I've seen it beautiful ways. I saw recently in a post a youngish black woman teaching children. They walk up to the mirror and she goes, "Who are you?" "I am Bob." "What are you?" "I am fierce." "Okay, next Bob." "Who am I?" "I am Sally." "Who are you?" "I am smart." Those kinds of affirmations for kids to help them to see themselves as wonderfully created in the image of love, I think is really important. I think there are new books out for children. My book, You Are So Wonderful, is a multiracial book of celebration for little kids, but Ibram Kendi has a new book about how to be an anti-racist baby. So I think if you Google anti-racist books for kids, there are books directed toward a white audience, there's books directed toward a multiracial audience, and there's more books directed than ever toward black children to make them feel good about themselves.
And I say that because a lot of our black children come from broken homes.
Yes, they do. Yes, they do.
They don't know father.
No,
they don't
that's
know
right.
mother.
That's
And
right.
then I'm looking at it through all that's going on with the gangs in our
Yeah.
community, the young black boys.
Because they make them feel connected, right? They make them feel connected. Feels like we need in communities an audit of what's available, and I'm gonna sit down, an audit of what's available, and to kind of say, if you're gonna do little babies and do that nursery thing, and then I'm gonna put this in the curriculum, and then I'm gonna put this in the after-school program, so that the whole community is working on a strategy for the little people.
Mm-hmm. Amen.
And I agree, and I know that some of that is starting. So, I want to, without keeping you here too long, in my seat, I felt like getting up and saying amen. I felt like saying hallelujah. I felt like, I just felt really, really enriched, very overwhelmed by what was shared today. And we thank you for coming and sharing that with us today. I see you.
I exist.
I see you.
I exist.
I see you.
I exist.
Please, let's love the hell out of this racism. Please, let's do that. We hold the Truth and Reconciliation Community Conversations. If you have not been a part of that, I invite you to be a part of that. I invite you to go to the Wesley Methodist Church.
Tomorrow.
Yes, and become members. Join the narrative. Join the narrative about Bermuda. Join the narrative of Wesley Methodist Church. And join the narrative of Kirk. We're here to welcome you and to encourage you to have the conversations. Thank you.
At Rev Jacqui Lewis, if you want to follow me. At Rev Jacqui Lewis. Let's keep that. Do you want my phone number on?
Just one note, if anyone hasn't bought tickets for tonight's dinner and now would like to attend, it's a 3-course meal right here. We do have some tickets available down at the tables at the back if anyone would like to come out for the dinner again tonight.